Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you're listening in from. I'm Michelle Bender, legal counsel at Ocean Vision Legal, the first law firm internationally entirely devoted to marine protection. I'm speaking to you today from outside Seattle, Washington, on the traditional lands of the Coast Salish peoples. I created the ocean rights concept in 2017 after seeing a large gap in the rights of nature movement. There was really a big lack of discourse surrounding rights of nature and its application to the ocean. So I made it my goal to address this gap. Our focus at OVL is to take rights of nature beyond the narrative level, beyond the passing of laws, to really understand implementation and enforcement and what this means in practice for the ocean. I want to start by framing ocean rights in relation to existing global ocean governance. Currently, global ocean governance is a complex and fragmented system with hundreds of institutions, frameworks, and bodies overseeing different aspects of how we use and protect the ocean. At the center of this system is the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, often called the Constitution of the Ocean. One of UNCLOS's most important provisions is the obligation to protect and preserve the marine environment. However, this obligation remains largely unfulfilled due to weak enforcement, lack of political will, and limited understanding of what this duty requires in practice. As an example, states have collectively committed to the protection of 30% of the ocean by 2030. However, only approximately 5% of the ocean is currently protected. Why are we not getting closer to this goal? Is it even achievable with the current system? The reality of the growing environmental crises and the decline in ocean health requires the global community to ask ourselves these questions, to address the values, goals, decisions, practices, and institutions that not only created the conditions for these environmental problems to arise in the first place, but they allow them to thrive. So we need to address the root cause. While UNCLOS establishes key legal principles, it's ultimately embedded with colonial and anthropocentric norms, such as freedom of the seas and maximum sustainable yield. It therefore centers the ocean and its biodiversity as a resource to manage, the ocean as a space to divide into zones, here for economic benefit, ultimately with the goal to take the most out of the system while preventing collapse. Without addressing the underlying values and norms that ultimately drive policy and economic activity, we risk falling short on achieving ambitions such as 30 by 30. This is where ocean rights is offered as a solution and opportunity. Simply put, ocean rights is the ethical and moral recognition of the ocean as a dynamic, autonomous, and living entity with inherent rights and intrinsic values. In 2017, less than 5% of the Rights of Nature initiatives, laws, policies, and judicial decisions were specific to or explicitly mentioned the ocean. Now, happy to report, nearly 15% of them are specific to the ocean. I'm also excited to share that Ocean Vision Legal is close to launching the Ocean Rights Movement website, which will include a map like this, where you can learn more about where ocean rights is occurring around the world, but it will also be a space for collaboration, to join the movement, for free resources, to be an advocate on behalf of the movement as well. Now, these examples, they range from the local to state, regional to international levels. This is because there's no one-size-fits-all approach. It's also because, rightfully so, laws and policies need to be adapted to local, cultural, political, legal, and ecological contexts in which they exist. However, we're seeing unifying threads and varying approaches that are being applied throughout the movement. In 2023, in Panama, National Sea Turtle Conservation Law also included a provision recognizing sea turtles as a subject of rights. Now, this followed already a year prior, where Panama passed a national law recognizing the rights of nature generally within the state as well. But this example represents a current scope and focus within the ocean rights movement, where the leverage or the viable area is to focus on migratory species such as whales, dolphins, sea turtles, and sharks. In Ecuador, rights of nature is recognized in the Constitution and also as a guiding principle for the special law of the Galapagos. There have been multiple judicial cases that have invoked rights of nature to protect marine ecosystems and species within Ecuador. They include cases on illegal shark fishing, illegal felling of mangroves, and the most recent one to uphold an artisanal fishing zone. We're also starting to see ocean rights in international law and developments such as the recent UN Ocean Decade Venice Declaration for Ocean Literacy Action, which acknowledges that recognizing the ocean as a living entity with inherent rights can help shift how we value and relate to the ocean. It can help create an ocean literate society. We also submitted a motion to this year's IUCN Congress, supported by both Panama and Vanuatu, which urges members to advance an ethical human-ocean relationship. Finally, we have the initiative toward a Universal Declaration of Ocean Rights, which is being championed by the state of Cabo Verde, which seeks to create a universal and ethical norm for global ocean governance. Now, this is just a small snapshot. There are over 50 examples of initiatives, laws, and policies that exist within the ocean rights movement, which will all be visible when the website launches. So the big overarching question remains, what does this mean in practice? Ocean rights advances an ethical relationship between humanity and the ocean. This is a relationship where human activities respect the ocean's ecological capacities. Economic models prioritize long-term health over short-term gains. Indigenous wisdom and scientific knowledge help drive policy and action. And humanity embraces a collective shift in behavior, honoring our responsibilities as caretakers of the ocean. Now, it does not do that with just the recognition of rights. In order to be effective, the recognition of rights must also be accompanied by the development of implementation and enforcement mechanisms, such as standing provisions. Who has the responsibility to represent the ocean in disputes affecting its health? Is it all citizens, or is it specific guardians? It involves principles and standards to guide decision-making in a way that ensures ocean health is maintained, that the ocean's rights and intrinsic values are respected. And it involves regulatory and institutional change that creates structures and processes that integrate diverse values and the rights of the ocean. Now, Hugo will share more specific contextual examples, but I want to highlight 3 implementation and enforcement mechanisms and what they mean in practice. First, rights are our most powerful moral and legal concept, and they reflect societal values. So rights is one way to show that the ocean is worthy of protection due to its intrinsic worth, separate from human benefit and utility. Entities with rights are afforded a higher standard of protection in Western legal systems. Therefore, protective and preventative action, such as marine protected areas or restrictions on fishing gear, they may all be required in order to ensure and respect ocean rights. We could see, for example, bans on bottom trawling, which is a highly destructive fishing technique, may be found inconsistent with the protection of ocean rights. Second is the principle of intrinsic values. The intrinsic value of the existence of marine species and ecosystems creates an obligation to apply precautionary and restrictive measures when there is a risk of serious or irreversible damage. Therefore, When there's scientific uncertainty or high risk of harm, the precautionary approach is a legal obligation, and this obligation can be enforced if it's not adhered to. So we could see, for example, a precautionary pause on deep sea mining. This might be consistent with ocean rights governance principles such as intrinsic values. My third example is the principle of ecological development or ecological sustainable use, which is also foundational to the IUCN World Declaration on Environmental Law. This principle requires that the use of the ocean may under no circumstance jeopardize its existence and the maintenance and regeneration of its life cycles, structure, functions, and evolutionary processes. This requires decision-making processes like EIAs, environmental impact assessments, to be evolved to ensure that they explicitly assess impacts to the ocean's vital cycles and processes. It also means that EIAs in and of themselves are not enough, and they must prioritize ecological integrity as well as cultural considerations alongside social and economic considerations. In practice, the right to economic activity can't be justified if it impedes the ocean's ability to maintain those vital cycles, such as the life cycles of small pelagic fish or oxygen production, and processes such as carbon sequestration. So ocean rights is not just the next frontier in rights in nature, but global ocean governance. I began this presentation by briefly mentioning a few of the legal obligations shared by states and businesses under international law. The three levers and the obligations created from them shows us how ocean rights may be a solution, a powerful transformative tool that can ensure the implementation of the obligation to protect and preserve the marine environment and more. With that, I'll end by sharing that, again, the Ocean Rights Movement website and declaration will be launched soon during this next month in April, so please stay tuned. Additionally, our task force's joint paper on the application of rights of nature in international ocean law and policy is due to be published this June. So please stay tuned on that as well and share when it is released. Please feel free to reach out with any questions you have, or if you want to collaborate and be a part of the ocean rights movement. Thank you.